I'm Louyse.
Hi, I'm Leanne.
And we are
the Ageless Alchemist podcast.
Hi everyone, I'm Louyse Vigneault.
Hi, and I'm Leanne Henwood-Adam, and we are
the Ageless Alchemist podcast.
So, Louyse, why don't you tell our audience a little bit about yourself?
Well, that could be a long story. Actually, I like to help people to transform them and become a better version of themselves. So I would say this is a transformational podcast.
Awesome. Tell me and our audience a little bit about how you got into doing what you're doing now.
Actually, I started in my teen. I was always very curious about history, about life, why people are doing what they're doing. So started to read different books, and back in the 80s, Tony Robbins came along and had his infomercial selling his cassette way back then at 2 a.m. so on TV, and started to learn more about neurolinguistic programming, and this became a rolling ball. So this really brought me to learn more about how the brain functions. So how about you, Leanne? Tell me more about you.
So I've been the fitness coordinator at Humber College for 32 years now. I didn't actually start as the fitness coordinator. I kind of fell into that job as much as I fell into the whole fitness industry. It's kind of funny. I look back now and I'm like, it was one series of events that sort of, snowballed and led me into this. I was working at Humber College initially, running their sailing school for a summer. It was a summer contract job, and I had been doing some sailing courses with them in the British Virgin Islands and started hanging out at the sailing school, and then got offered this job. So I quit a job that I didn't like to work the summer at the sailing school. And then I worked at the yacht charter company that we use for the British Virgin Islands sailing program. And then I got laid off because the economy tanked. So I called up my contacts at Humber and I said, hey, I'm looking for a job. Is there anything available? And there was a secretarial job available at a small little campus that doesn't exist anymore. It's called the Keelsdale campus. And I thought, well, I'm not a secretary, but I'll try. Let's try this. And somehow I got the job. And I worked there for about a year, maybe less than a year, when the economy continued to go bad and Humber College was downsizing. And so my boss and I got sent to the North Campus of Humber College, and we ended up in what was student life and athletics altogether at that time. And then my boss got let go because they were downsizing even more, and athletics ended up with me. I just sort of stayed there, and I thought, well, one of the things I ended up doing was looking after a night school program called the Fitness Leadership Certificate Program that you know very well. Mm-hmm. And I thought, if I'm going to talk to people about this program, I should probably take it and learn a little bit more about it. And as I started taking these courses, I fell in love with fitness and nutrition and wellness. And I asked my boss at the time if I continued to get educated in this, if I got the certifications, could I do the fitness coordinator job, because we didn't have a full-time person doing that at that time. And he said, well, yes, but definitely do your education and whatnot, which I did. So I worked full-time, went to school part-time, did all the certifications, completed my education, and I've been there ever since. And I fell in love with it later in life. It's funny, I was not the kind of person in high school that was into this. I was always an outdoors person. I grew up out in the country with 4 brothers. We were always outdoors, riding bikes, going for hikes, but when it came to gym class, forget it. When I got to high school, I did everything I could to not do gym class, and then I ended up doing this as a living. And I've been here ever since. And so I've done multiple certifications. And yeah, I'm doing all of this other stuff on the side now with you. And how about you? How did your education, how did you fall into fitness?
Just like you, I was more an outdoor person, like doing different sports. And I had a car accident that I couldn't get my strength back. I was in bed for almost 3 months. I had to relearn to walk, to connect my brain with my body. And because of this, I thought, well, maybe if I start to go at the gym and lift weights, maybe it's gonna help me to get my strength back so I can practice the sports I was practicing. And the funniest part is I fell in love with pumping iron, and like they say, the rest is history. So this is where I am now. And I love what I do. I wouldn't change anything.
And you came to Humber and you
Yep.
did the night school
fitness,
certificate,
yeah.
the fitness leadership certificate program that we
Yeah.
were offering.
Yeah.
And then I actually don't remember the moment that we met, but you do.
We met in the nutrition course that they were offering. You came to introduce yourself, and there was the nutrition and wellness. Back then, it was nutrition and wellness course with CanFit Pro, and this is where I really met you, like talking to you and so on. But I met you once when you came into one of the course we were following. So.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So we kind of fell into each other's lives at some point, and we've stayed connected over the years. We're teaching yoga and the Zen zone and some things like that for us at Humber.
Yeah.
And we've always taught courses together. We've been teaching CPR first aid together. And then just thought that, you know what, at the same time, we came to this idea that, you know, a podcast would be a really cool idea. And so here we are.
Yep. And you're going to see more of us because we want to help you.
Yes. So let me ask you a quick question. What is it about helping people that really makes you passionate about that?
It's life is meant to be beautiful, just like the movie Life is Beautiful, or Beautiful Life. I think that's the name of the movie. And the thing is that people have a tendency to always stay in the same loop and always relieving the negativity in their life. So when things happen, then they go through that loop and they stay just like a little guinea pig running his wheel and going around and around and around, never exiting from there. So what we're going to do with the Ageless Alchemy podcast, we want to give you tips and maybe tell you stories where we were able to get out of the loop and being able to transform our life to have a better life and a beautiful life. So
Yeah. That's awesome. I think it's amazing. I really love personally everything that we do in this field because there's so much information out there that really confuses people, and the average person looks at, you know, something that's on the news, or they read a magazine, or they look on social media and they see different conflicting information on social media all the time, and it's always bothered me. And I just thought, you know what, I really truly honestly want to help people and give them the best advice, and I think we have lived a lot, and I think that our experiences are, and the education that we have will really be able to help people. So I look forward to sharing more information with you guys. Hopefully you stay tuned and you come back and you watch more. And
yeah,
I look forward to doing this with you, Louyse.
Yeah, me too. And stay curious, be curious, and have a growth mindset. So open your mind to learning new things and maybe trying something new, and maybe this will help you to change your life and transform your life for the better.
So, Louyse, why don't you explain what an alchemist is?
Actually, back in the days, alchemists was there to transform any kind of metal into gold. So that's what they were doing, and they were considered sometimes sorcerer, and they were killed for this because at the time nobody thought that this could be done.
Magic.
Magic, exactly. It was magic. So actually, what they were doing transformation of metal or whatever they had and turn it into gold, which we know now we can do different stuff by transforming metal into something else. We all know that it's science, but they were ahead of their time. And so what we want to do now for this podcast, the Alchemist, the Ageless Alchemist podcast, is we want to give everybody tools to transform your life. So you are where you are, and with this, we can transform you into something else. So we can give you tips. Doesn't mean that you're going to take it, because you're always going to be the last person to decide if you want to do it or not. But it's worth a try. That's always what I say. It's like when I used to work in an office, we talk about being an administrative secretary. Well, I was for many years. And I remember sometimes the boss was telling me, Louyse, no, that's not good. You have to do it this way. Okay. And I would say, okay, let's try it. Sometimes it did work very well. It's true. It was faster, quicker, and I used that method. But if it wasn't working well and it wasn't helping me in my job, it was like goodbye for that tip. So that's what we're going to be doing, giving you tips. How about you, Leanne?
Well, I was just going to add to that. I think that we have discovered over the years, and we know that it's only going to work if you are ready to make it work. You have to be ready to make a change. Otherwise, it's not going to work. Anybody could tell you to make a change. And unless you're ready to make that change, it's not going to work. So, love that. And then I was thinking a lot about, the name of the podcast. And so you've described very well about the alchemist part. But I was really thinking a lot about the whole ageless part and what does that mean to me. And I really think that, it means so many different things to so many different people, but ageless means to me just not thinking about your chronological age. I think we've all grown up thinking about what it is like to be a certain age. I remember being younger and thinking, oh my gosh, 60 is really old, 70 is really old, 80 is really old. And I think that has changed, and it certainly has changed as I've aged. I don't feel my age. Sometimes look in the mirror and think, oh my gosh, yes, you have aged. But I'm trying to change that whole mindset. And I think being ageless is taking away the chronological aspect of the age and just looking at how you feel and how you go about life. I think being ageless is being open to everything that's happening in the world, looking at how you can live your life by adapting and pivoting and all of that kind of thing. So it doesn't necessarily mean how we look. It doesn't necessarily mean our chronological age. I think a lot of it has to do with how we feel. And so that goes really well with what you were saying about what we want to do and what alchemy is, because we want people to stop thinking about the numbers and the very definite things. Like, instead of saying, I'm 60 years old, you look at how do you feel and go through life that way and making changes that way.
It makes complete sense to me. So that's true. And like for me, I always say, we have to find people in different age group that can be an inspiration, that can show us, yes, we can live for many, many, many years, up to 100 if we want to, and still have a quality of life. That's what is really important, is to have that quality of life and making sure we can live in our own house and be able to do whatever we want to do at that age, because we need to adjust as we age. We need to adjust whatever we're doing.
The mindset is really interesting. You know, I really honestly look back at my two sets of grandparents, and I look at them and I compare them when I think of this kind of thing and being ageless, because my mom's parents were farmers, and so they worked hard their entire life. And when my grandfather sold the farm, they built a house in the Hockley village, and their idea then was, we are now retired. And so they got up every day and they had their routine, they had their breakfast, and then they sat in these armchairs in front of this big picture window and they looked out onto the street and what was happening in the village. And they did do some other things like play euchre at the church and, you know, do some things like that. But it was very much a retirement kind of mindset, what they thought retirement was. And then my dad's parents, when they retired, they're like, we're gonna buy a place in Florida. We are going to go cycling, we're gonna go hiking, we're gonna do all of these activity things. And when you saw them together, there's one picture I vividly remember that is both sets of grandparents side by side, and I love them both dearly, but my mom's parents looking a little bit more dressed up and very stiff kind of looking, and my dad's parents just, you know, the shorts and the tank tops and the, you know, just standing very much at ease with themselves. And that has always stuck with me, because I thought it was just two completely different mindsets about what retirement meant to them. And I look at, and what I'd like to help promote is more of the way my dad's parents were. You know, it's like, okay, yes, retirement, we are retiring from whatever our full-time job was, but there's still life out there.
What else can we do?
Yes.
I love
exactly.
this. I love this. So you were talking about your grandparents being quite inspirational for you, and how one set of grandparents and compared to the other set. And I have to admit, for me, it was pretty much the same thing too. Both my grandparents on my dad or on my mom's side. On my mom's side, he was a firefighter, and the thing, pretty much the same, when he retired as a firefighter, he didn't have anything else to do. And I think it was devastating for him, because he died within 3 years after from a heart attack.
Wow.
And he was forced to retire. And I thought, well, for me in my head, because he died like I was in my teen years, I remember I said, well, I'll never retire. And that's pretty much what I'm doing. I will never retire. Trust me, I'll always find something to do. And on my dad's side, I was on my mom's side. So on my dad's side, my grandmother was really ahead of her time, because her husband died and she had 14 children. Wow. The youngest being my father, who was only 2 years old. So she managed, because she had, but they had, like both my grandfather, I never met him. They had a general store in the place where I was born, and she kept on with the general store, was able to send, like we're talking way back in the 1940s, 1930s, 1940s, like we're talking a long time ago. And she was able to send most of her kids to college or university.
Wow.
Back then. And she worked until the day she died. And I thought, I want to be like her. My grandmother was my kind of my inspiration. And my dad was the same too. Like he worked until the day he died.
Yeah.
And that's probably what I'll do too, because they were my inspiration. And I have to say, if you don't have anything to look forward to, that means you're not growing. We need to grow, and we need to have a purpose. We are not meant as human beings to sit in front of the TV all the time and watch TV and don't do anything. We need to be active, to be out there, and even if it's just walking every day. You need to do something every single day in order for you to have a better quality of life and adjusting with what age group you are.
That's amazing. I love how your grandmother was your inspiration, but your grandfather was in a way too, inspiration in what you didn't want to do.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, I love it. I love how we can look at history. We can look at what's happened in the past, what our family has done in the past, and grow from it. Exactly. You know, I think a lot of people tend to get stuck sometimes in their way of thinking, and they're thinking, oh, well, this is my history, and so now this is what happened before, and so now this is my history, this is my future, this is my life now, and not realizing that they don't have to follow the same footsteps that's happened in the past, that they have the ability to make changes and make their life better or different, or, you know, whatever they choose to do.
Exactly.
That's amazing. I agree with you, though. I think that as much as I like the idea of retiring, a typical retirement, I think I would be very bored with the way most people think of retirements, because I need to be busy doing things. I do like my downtime. I do love to sit down and watch a TV show that I've recorded. I do love to read books, but I mean, I'm always learning. And I've told students over the years that when you're in the fitness industry, you will always be learning if you want to stay in the industry.
Yes.
I am now in the middle of taking a holistic nutrition certification, and absolutely loving it. It's hard. It's online. It's self-directed. It's hard to stay on track, but I'm learning, and it's something that I'm passionate about, and I really love it. And I know you're always taking courses as well. You know, and when people ask me at work, you know, how old I am, when they find out how old I am, they're always shocked, and they're like, wait, you're still teaching classes, as are you. You're still taking courses, you're still learning, you're still doing all of these things and trying new things like we are with this podcast, right? I think I love that about you, and I see that in me too, where you've got that ability to learn and that passion to learn, but then that passion to keep doing things and to keep trying things. Yeah. And I think that that's important. It's like, never be afraid to fail. You know, try new things, see how it goes.
Yep.
I remember, I think I told you this, when I was in college, one of my college roommates said to me, after a breakup with my college boyfriend, and I was very upset, he was like, but have you learned something from this? And I had to stop and think about it. I said, well, yeah, I did learn something from that. And he said, then it's not all bad. And so I just thought about that as we were talking about this, because I think if you're constantly learning, and no matter what happens in our lives, we try something, we fail at it, we learn something from it, and we move on.
Yep, exactly. So, completely right. We need to learn from whatever failure we had, because it's never a failure, it's just an experience.
Exactly. And
we learn from it, so we know we're not going to repeat it, and we're going to grow from it and get better and stronger, and that's true.
I think if we take the meaning out of some of these words, like if you think about the word failure, you think about it, or most of us would think about it as being such a negative thing, right? So let's take the meaning out of that. It's not a failure the way we think about it, it's a learning experience.
Yeah, exactly.
And if we can sort of take our minds and twist the way that we think about some of the more negative words and things, I think it will help us grow and move on. And that's a lot about what we'll end up talking about in this podcast with you, Louyse, because of all of your experience with neuro-linguistic programming and how the mind works.
Yeah.
And I just find this stuff fascinating.
Yeah, it is fascinating, and I'm still learning today about it. Like, and sometimes I will say something, and I thought, oh, maybe I should push the reset button there. Reset, think something different.
I remember you telling me about that, this imaginary reset button. So
Yep.
when you find your mind going down a negative path, you hit the reset button to go off in a different way.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's actually something like that that helped me when I was experiencing panic attacks. And it was something that I had never experienced in my life. And I remember several times being at work or driving home from work and thinking, because I teach CPR, it's like I'm having a heart attack. I had all these symptoms of having a heart attack. And then this one time, I was driving home and I collapsed in my dining room and told my husband, call 911, I think I'm having a heart attack. And the paramedics came on site and they said, we don't think you're having a heart attack, because they hooked me up to the EKG and everything. We think you're having a panic attack. And I'd experienced it a few times after that. And it was the idea of having to possibly take medication, which scares me because I have had allergic reactions to things in my life. So I'm always scared about pills. I'm also, I guess, from way back then was always looking at how can I do things more naturally versus there's nothing wrong with taking pills. If you need the medication, you need the medication. So I'm not advocating don't take medication. I'm just saying for me, I wanted to explore other options first. So when my doctor said, take this medication, it scared me enough to look at what other possibilities there were. And I downloaded this book, and it literally, I got to the first page, and I never read any further. The very first paragraph this guy wrote said, no one has ever died from a panic attack. You feel like you're going to, but you're not going to actually die from it. So that helped me, because that's where my mind was going with this. And I'm thinking, I'm a mom, I have kids at home, I'm too young to die, all of this kind of thing, right? So I'm like, okay, so that helped me. I'm like, okay, so now I know I'm not going to die. That helped me think about this. Then I thought, the other thing I read was that your mind goes to the negative because it's what it's used to. So this pathway of whatever was happening in my mind, it was taking me to the negative, and I was having these panic attacks because it was familiar. There was a saying I heard recently, and I wish I could remember exactly how it goes, but it was something like, your body will go, it's easier for your body to go to a familiar hell than a more difficult happiness, something along those lines. And I thought that kind of represented what I went through, because what I told myself was, it's like you're walking through a field and you're doing this shortcut through this field to get over to that other house. And you take the same path all the time, and it wears this pathway into the field. And then when it rains, that's where the water goes, because it's an easy pathway. And maybe there's some, prickly things that have grown up in the pathway, and so it's maybe not so good of a path anymore, but that's the easiest way to get there. But if you want to change things, and you don't want to walk through those prickly things, you need to go off the beaten path. And so that's what I kept telling myself. So every time I found my brain going to this panic of something's wrong with me, I actually made up a little song in my head, and I just would repeat it in my head, and I would sing it to myself. That was all positive about being happy and healthy and all of those kinds of type of things, and it changed my mindset. So I went off of going down that negative path and off the beaten path into a new thing. And it took a little while, but it worked for me.
Wow, I love that story.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. See how you change your mindset.
Yeah.
And that's true. Like when we see cartoons with an angel on one side and the devil on the other side, and both are talking to the cartoon character, and it's true. We have that duality inside of us, and we can choose the path we want. So if we want to stay more in a positive path, sometimes when the negative comes in, doesn't mean no, I'm positive, but doesn't mean that I don't have those negative thoughts. So when one comes in and I realize, oh my God, oh, reset button. So yeah, I'm just, and then I'll rephrase whatever I said to myself. And that's what is great, because we have that opportunity in our mind, even though we have that duality of good and bad, we can always choose the path we want to go to. So love this.
And we have the choice.
We have the choice. We always have the choice.
It really bothers me when I hear people say, I don't have a choice. When we do have a choice.
We do.
And we can choose how we're going to look at our life.
Yep. We
Love
always. More to come later.
So remember your reset button.
Until next time. Bye.
Bye.